Hi, this is Alessio, Rastani, leading trader. Hope you're well. In this important video, I'm going to share with you 5 words that every Bitcoin trader or investor should always ask. In fact, when you learn these 5 words, this will put you way ahead of everybody else out there. And I'm hoping it'll give you a much better insight as to how we approach the markets. In fact, I'm also going to share with you some of the important lessons we've learned from the greatest traders and investors in the world, which, by the way, when you learn this, that is also going to put you way ahead of everybody else as well. But let me first of all start with this. You see, in the previous video that I posted about Bitcoin, in my Bitcoin analysis video, I gave you 2 potential scenarios for Bitcoin, and I told you which one I think is the more likely. So I said, first of all, that the more likely, the more probable scenario on Bitcoin is that we're forming an upward trend. I said that this major rally off the panic lows was the beginning of a wave 1, that we've likely completed wave 2, and that very likely we're now starting the wave 3 move higher. Okay, and I said that if we take out that high near the 11,800 level, then very likely we're moving higher in a wave 3. And again, I said that this was my preferred scenario. As you can see here in that video, I said my personal view is that as long as Bitcoin is holding above 9,300, the odds favor a move higher. Now I stand by that. But also in the same video, I said, well, what if that doesn't happen? What if that doesn't work out? Then what? Because I also wanted you to understand what happens, what do we do if that scenario doesn't work out. So I showed you a different scenario as well. This is a more slightly bearish perspective, which is that I said if Bitcoin does not move higher and instead rolls over, then we're looking for 8,200 to 8,600. Now, I want to explain to you very simply why I did that and why I showed you those 2 different scenarios, because it's really important for you to understand that before we move forward. Let me just share with you 2 of the key important lessons from the greatest traders and investors in the world. By the way, Paul Tudor Jones is one of my favorite traders and investors of all time. He's a billion-dollar hedge fund manager, and you can learn a lot from his experience and what he says in this book, Market Wizards. Let me just share with you what he says in that book. He says, every day I assume every position I have is wrong. Now that sounds quite strange, right? Why would he say that? The reason is that Paul Tudor Jones wants to know what is the maximum amount he could possibly lose if his position, if his trade call does not end up being right. Okay. By the way, notice this is exactly the opposite of what most people do. Most people out there, probably people you know, your friends or people you know on social media, what most people do is that as soon as they enter a trade, whether it's on Bitcoin or some other market, they immediately assume that that position has to be right and therefore has to be a winner. They never ever bother to question, what did I do if they're wrong on that trade? And here's the second quote. This is also from one of my favorite traders, a world-class trader, Larry Williams. And here's what he says in his book. He says, based on my research and experience, I have developed a powerful and profitable belief system, which is, I believe the current trade I am in will be a loser, a big loser at that. Now, why does he say that? He says this. This continues to be my most important market mantra. Winners we can handle. It's the losses that kill you. This may sound pretty negative to all you positive thinkers, but positive thinking can give way to thinking you will win, a surefire formula for buying and selling too many contracts and holding on too long. After all, if you are positive things will work out, you are certain to hold for a bounce or turn that never comes. Now, of course, in this particular quote, he's talking about trading contracts, but this could easily apply to any other market or indeed any other asset class like Bitcoin as well. And the key lesson we can learn from Larry Williams in this quote is this: hope is never a strategy. This is a quote from one of my favorite books on trading psychology, which is by Mark Douglas, Trading in the Zone. Again, if you can get a hold of this book, if you want to take trading and investing seriously, I highly recommend this book. Here's what Mark Douglas says in his book. In fact, he says there's 5 fundamental truths, and these are the 5 fundamental truths that every person should stick by when it comes to trading or investing. Number 1, anything can happen. Now, I don't want to go through every single one of these, but here's another important quote. You don't need to know what is going to happen next in order to make money. And number 5, every moment in the market is unique. So, going back to my Bitcoin analysis video, why did I show you 2 potential scenarios on Bitcoin? One is a bullish perspective, which is what I believe, and one a potentially slightly bearish perspective. The reason has to do with this. Imagine you're a passenger in an airplane. Let me ask you this. Would you like your pilot only to know what to do when things go right? Or would you like your pilot to be prepared, both mentally and physically, if suddenly something went wrong in the airplane? I'm sure your answer is going to be the second one. you definitely want your pilot to be prepared for a crisis situation when things go wrong. One of my favorite television programs is Air Crash Investigation. Perhaps you've seen it. And in Air Crash Investigation, they said the number one reason why there are so many air crashes is not because of the weather or because something goes wrong with the actual airplane itself, but simply because of pilot error. And the number one reason for pilot error is because most pilots simply do not train themselves mentally and physically for a crisis situation to know what to do when things go wrong. So going back to our video, what I always want to do in my videos is show you, hey, okay, so this is our opinion. This is what we think Bitcoin will likely do. But what if it doesn't do that? What happens if Bitcoin does not follow our projection and indeed our perspective? That is why I also want to show you to be mentally prepared in a crisis situation if in case it does not do what we want it to do. All right? And that brings me to my 5 words every Bitcoin trader or investor should always ask, which is, what if I am wrong? In other words, when you enter a trade, when you enter any potential investment or trade, you should always ask yourself, hey, what if you're wrong on that point? What if you're wrong on your perspective? Because it's only when you ask that question, what if you're wrong on that trade, that then you're thinking like the greatest traders in the world, like Paul Tudor Jones, like Larry Williams, which, by the way, brings me to this point. Markets can be cruel and merciless. Let me just say this. Nobody chooses to be a trader or a market analyst if your desire is to be congratulated every single time the market does something you want it to do. Okay, if you want congratulations for every time the market does something you want it to do, then trading is not the profession you want to go into. For that, I suggest you become a politician in Washington, because politicians in Washington, D.C., all they want to do is say how they're right about everything. All right? But that's not what traders do. As good traders and market analysts, we always have to be reminded of the fact the markets can punish you and be extremely cruel if you think that you're right on every trading decision you make. And believe me, guys, when I tell you that I personally have suffered my share of frustration and humiliation as well. In fact, you will see from my previous videos that when I get something wrong, I do admit to it. In fact, I send you a video, and in fact, I email my subscribers and letting them know if I get something wrong. Here's a video I posted 3 months ago saying, hey, I got it wrong in the stock market. In fact, here's an email newsletter I sent to my subscribers on Leading Traders saying, this is my latest mistake, please learn from it. Because guess what? If I make a wrong call in the market, I want you to learn from it. Because it's only when we can learn from our mistakes that we can become better traders and progress and become better investors. And by the way, if those folks who bought Bitcoin back when it was 20,000, if they'd even bothered to ask those 5 words, if they said to themselves, hey, what if they were wrong about buying Bitcoin at 20,000 when we were warning them at the time that it was a wrong decision to make? Guess what? They would not have been sitting on this massive 70% hole when it dropped, and they would have been protecting themselves against the risk. So let me just give you a quick update here on what's going on Bitcoin. Very quickly, all I want to say is this. Taking a look at the weekly time frame chart. Now, I mentioned the difference between impulsive and corrective wave patterns. And to me, you can see that after this major rally on Bitcoin, this movement on Bitcoin, what you see here is a classic ABC, A, B, C, corrective wave pattern. And as I explained in the previous video, after an ABC corrective wave pattern, what we usually then see is a continuation of the previous trend. And I'm looking for this new wave. And by the way, notice that we're already now above the weekly 21 average. The price has managed to rally and get above the weekly 21 average, which is an immensely bullish signal. And as I mentioned in previous videos, I believe that this low we made here on Bitcoin, just under 6,000, is potentially going to be a long-term bottom on Bitcoin. All right, guys, I hope this video has helped you. And if you liked it, please give it a thumbs up. And also please remember to subscribe to our videos for future updates as well. Thank you very much indeed.